Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sociology of Gender, Week 4, Module 4, Gender and Sexuality. Okay, so what is sexuality? What does it mean to have sex? Is oral sex sex? Okay, we tend to think of sex as something, or sexuality as natural, and it is. But there are a bunch of cultural meanings to sex and sexuality as well. Oh, yeah, human sexual behavior takes a variety of forms, and social institutions have a great deal of influence on what many of us think as a private matter. Okay, so sexuality is public, it is political, it's part of the social structure, and it is gendered, okay? And it is socially constructed. Let's get through some of these things here. We'll start off this slide with a painting, called, let's see if I can get this, I'm supposed to get this thing to work here. There we go. This is called Tavern Scene, or The Orgy. It's by William Hogarth, 1735 in London. And this is basically an orgy in a tavern going on here, showing that sexuality has always been around, okay? A lot of times we think of sexuality as just something new, and that our thoughts around sexuality are the most progressive ever and things, but sexual norms swing from time to time and from place to place. Okay, this is one of the first things. So I was kind of surprised by this because, well, I myself come from another an English background, half English, and but my ancestors were more, Puritan, and so that's kind of what was descended down my line. However, this was going on too, okay? So, what is sexuality? I looked through the Anderson text, and she never really defines it, so I got this from a former marriage and family textbook I used to do when I taught marriage and family. Feelings, thoughts, attitudes, values, and behaviors of humans who have learned a set of cues that evoke a sexual or an erotic response. Okay, so it's a very wide thing. When I think about sexuality, I'm talking about very broad kinds of behaviors and things and attitudes and beliefs. A lot of times when people say sexuality, they're talking about lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, things like that. But I think of sexuality as even like holding hands, kissing, like a certain kind of ideas of sexual beauty and things like that. So I think of it as a very broad thing that is socially constructed. Okay. How do we tell if something is socially constructed? One way is to look around time and place. And if sexuality is just only natural, then it has to be done the same way from culture to culture. Now, there is sexual intercourse in every culture, or they die. Okay, that happens in every culture. But let's take a look at some of the varieties of sexual behavior from culture to culture, and I posted some references here. Okay, Inishbog, Ireland. Okay, sex is really taboo, considered very taboo. People would wash themselves, and this is research that came from mid-20th century. It might not, if you go to Inishbog right now, you might see some different attitudes, but traditionally they would wash themselves only on the parts of the skin that shows, like the hands and the lower leg or something, okay, whatever. The face, they'd wash the face, they'd wash the hands, but anything that is like covered, they wouldn't wash, okay? Sexual intercourse was considered a necessary evil for reproductions, but couples had sex with their clothes on, okay? Babies were not breastfed. Love is not expressed physically. Any kind of love is not expressed physically because it's considered too sexual, okay? There's no sex education. In fact, when girls got their first period, they often thought that they were dying because no one taught them otherwise, that, menstruating was something nor part of the natural development here. So girls didn't really learn about sex at all. Later, as women, they were taught that sex was part of her duty, okay? Boys learned about sex because they worked outside and they watched animals, okay? There was no concept or interest in women having orgasms. There was no foreplay or anything like that, okay? Very repressive when it comes to sex. On the other side, we've got Mangaya, okay? Among the, if I pronounce this right, A'ua'u people in the Cook Islands, okay? Sex is encouraged. In fact, children were encouraged to masturbate at about 10 years old. And at 13, the male child was taken from the village by an older man who would circumcise the boy, and he would be given instructions on sexual pleasure, like how to help his partner achieve an orgasm. Okay, so that was his kind of, sex is like encouraged, okay? In some cultures, you might find this interesting, romantic kissing is considered disgusting, okay? I'm more thinking of some, in some like South American cultures and some sub-Saharan African cultures, okay? It's, yes, it's thought of as disgusting. You know, if you look at it from a particular point of view, it makes sense because you're licking someone else's spit, which, is, in a lot of cultures, that's just gross, okay? I could see that. So, sexuality is socially constructed, and one thing that's also constructed are sexual scripts. These are kind of the societal or cultural guidelines for defining and engaging in sexual behaviors, okay? We can think of these as blueprints, okay, for engaging in sexual behaviors. What is sex? With whom? How long? What positions? There are rules and expectations of sexual behavior. And many of these rules shape our desires, okay? And by the way, when it comes to like the rules of sexual behavior, there's no such thing as a liberated sexuality or truly free sexuality. Even when you defying the rules is always in reference to the rules, okay? Our sexual desires and behaviors then are scripted, okay? And you might be familiar with the scripts, okay? This comes from Wade and Ferree's book, Gender, Ideas, Interactions, and Institutions, okay? And this is a long quote here, but I'm going to read it, and this probably sounds familiar to you, okay? This is from their book. It goes something like this. Kissing, closed mouth, then close body contact, kissing, open mouth, then groping, first the butt, then the breasts. Once all of this has occurred, the couple gets horizontal. Then there's more kissing and groping, including the touching of genitals through clothes. Clothes start coming off. First her shirt, then his, then her pants, then his, then her bra and underwear, finally his. It's a toss-up if it's a same-sex couple. If it's a heterosexual couple, there's touching of naked genitals, oral sex on him, then penile vaginal intercourse. Oral sex on the women is a wild card these days, but it usually doesn't precede oral sex on the man. The scripts of same-sex couples aren't as straightforwardly gendered, but they still have a somewhat rigid ascending order of intimacy. So yes, I'm sure this all sounds familiar. Now, it doesn't happen like this all the time. And this is more likely to happen, I think, in the earlier encounters. Like any other social script, sexual scripts ease anxiety around social interactions. So think about other social interactions you have, and there's a certain script that you follow in those interactions. And a lot of those scripts are to ease anxiety about what to do. Sexual interactions are the same. They're very similar here. Um, Now, this is institutionalized as well. Okay. For example, if a man begins an encounter by groping the breast, he could be charged with sexual assault. Okay. There's an idea about the bases that you get. And I'll get to this later on in the course too. But we get these ideas about what, like, levels of sexual intimacy. And it's funny because we learned them through the culture somehow, but we are also expected to know them because we can be charged with sexual assault if we do not get consent for these new levels of sexual intimacy. Okay. Sexual scripts are gendered. Okay. So this comes from Michael W. Wiederman's article, The Gendered Nature of Sexual Scripts, okay? How boys and girls learn different sexual scripts. One is that there's differences in body explorations, okay? Boys are encouraged at a young age to explore, okay, in many different ways, but also that they lead to this kind of exploration in terms of their body. So they're more likely to masturbate, okay, for one thing. Girls are taught to, be more contained and controlled and not explore the world as much. This includes their own body, okay? So women become gatekeepers in social interactions, okay? So the boys taking the initiative, the girls saying yes or no. Boys become more body centered in terms of encounters, and girls become more relationship oriented. Okay, because there's also a risk to a woman's reputation. Okay, if she has too much sex or inappropriate sex or sex with the wrong people. Okay, it's like this. There's a double standard going on. Okay. Girls learn early on that they are to be more controlled sexually, more controlled sexually. So men come to see sex as an accomplishment, and it's a boost to their self-esteem. This is generalizing, I am aware of, okay? However, it might sound familiar to some of you, even if you yourself don't embrace it. You could probably observe it places in society. Okay, one thing is that men see sex as like something that's scarce. Okay, and they feel the whole kind of thing about. Just think about, guys congratulating other guys about getting laid as if they getting laid. Hey, as if like you won the lottery. Okay. So it's like a scarcity kind of thing. And the more scarce something is, the more desirable it becomes. Okay. There's also a social psychological principle called reactance. It's kind of, what we might think of as reverse psychology. Okay, so it's like tell somebody they can't do it, and then they'll push harder. So this is where it gets kind of screwed up. Is that men are pursuing, and sometimes women resist. Okay, and so he pushes harder because of that, and it leads to some very screwed up dynamics and behaviors on the men's part if they see, if they think of no as try harder, then that could lead to sexual assault and rape. Okay. sexual behavior and self-esteem. For women, for men, actually, they see that sex is an accomplishment and is a boost to their self-esteem. For women, they see sex as intimacy and is not a boost to her self-esteem, especially if the guy has no standards or something like, let's see, because it's thought of that, well, he'll have sex with anybody, okay? Except when having sex with a man of high status is a boost to her self-esteem, okay? So the challenge for women is to communicate to the man that he is worth the risk to the body of reputation, but she is not, quote, not that kind of girl, okay? The challenge for men is to communicate that he is not just interested in her for sex and is interested in pursuing a relationship. And in sexual encounters, as I said before, that's basically what that quote I had at the beginning is, by Wade and Faree. That's a quote that kind of like the sexual encounters. He's taking the lead. She's setting the stage. Okay. So I want to say something about this article here. Is there some truth in it? Yes, but I don't think we should take it too seriously, nor do I think we should overgeneralize, okay? However, do I recognize this in the culture? Yes, this happens, but other things happen too, okay? Other things happen too. Like there are people who sometimes women do want to take initiative, and sometimes men are not as are fine with that. Okay, the risk to violating the sexual scripts is that, or violating norms of sexuality, is that some people might be defined as deviant. Okay, in particular ways, and become less desirable. So, and there's some deviating terms, or not deviating terms of deviance. For instance, if a man is not interested in somebody and expresses that, certain assumptions might be made about him by some people. Or if a woman is too interested, certain assumptions might be made about her. And there are some terms for people who do that, okay, that are not very nice. Okay, so I'd like you to do something here. I'm going to ask you to stop the recording or pause the recording, okay? And I want you to write down synonyms for each of these words, okay? Try to get to 10, okay? And the words are penis, vagina, clitoris, masturbation, and intercourse. So try to write down 10 synonyms for each of those, okay? So pause the recording and do that. Again, the words are penis, vagina, clitoris, masturbation, and intercourse. And I'll see you when you get finished. Okay, now that you are finished with that, you may have come up with words like this, okay? For penis, you may have dick, cock, schlong, wang, dong, joystick, sausage, quote, purple helmeted warrior of love, fuck stick, pecker, things like that. For vagina, you might have pussy, cunt, taco, clam, coochie, fish purse, vagin, vajayjay, patucci, or dick pocket. Okay. For masturbation, you might have jacking off, jerking off, spanking the monkey, wanking, flogging the bishop, beating, fapping, self-motivation. For intercourse, you might have fucking, screwing, banging, grinding, porking, the deed, shagging, doing the nasty, bumping uglies, doing it, okay? For clitoris, pearl, love button, pink bean. Okay, there's a few things to say here, okay? So I've done this exercise several times, and some words are more common than others. I also went to a website called Urban Thesaurus, and if you type in a word and you get like all the slang terms and things. So anyway, so I went there for a few things, but let's start with both masturbation and intercourse are pretty male-centered, okay? Now, there's a couple of them for masturbation. There's a couple of them for women, like jilling or flicking the bean and things like that. But there's a lot of them are very male-centered: jacking off, jerking off, spanking the monkey, wanking, flogging the bishop. I have no look at that. Yeah, I got that from Urban Thesaurus. Okay. Intercourse: fucking, screwing, banging, grinding, porking, the deed, shagging, doing, very active, very masculine, things like that. Okay. So they're kind of like masculine terms. For penis, they're mostly positive. Dick, cock, schlong, wang, dong, joystick, sausage. And this one, I wrote this down. I got this from Urban Thesaurus because it seems to be a very positive kind of image. Purple helmeted warrior of love. Masculine, strong, dignified, positive, things like that. Pecker, fuckstick, Those are more positive than pussy, cunt, taco, clam, coochie, fish purse, patucci, vagin, vajayjay, dick pocket, okay? Is probably more, like if you call somebody a name, call someone a name, okay? It's more insulting, I think, to be called a pussy or cunt than it is to be called a dick, okay? It's, in fact, I'm not even sure it's an insult to call someone a dick. I mean, some people might really identify with that, but especially guys, okay? If you call a guy a pussy or a cunt or something, that's a much bigger insult than calling them a dick, I think, okay? So, okay. But for clitoris, there's not a lot of words, not a lot of synonyms. Now, go to Urban Thesaurus and you will find a lot of them, but a lot of them I never heard of. Okay, but my guess is that you probably didn't come up with 10 on your own. Okay, you probably could come up with 10 for all the other ones, but not. But clitoris, there's probably less, okay? Maybe I'm wrong, but, this is when I've done this exercise in class. That's how it's worked out, okay? So, what's going on here? Well, the clitoris is kept under the hood, okay, according to Shirley Mathiel Ogletree and Harvey J. Ginsburg, okay, in their article called Kept Under the Hood, because the clitoris is homologous to the penis, okay? The penis is the center of male sexuality, and the clitoris is the center of female sexuality. But the clitoris is rarely talked about, okay? For example, how many of you have heard your mom say the word? Okay, I bet very few, but some of you, okay? It's also very rarely in sex instruction books. In Ogletree and Ginsburg's study of 57 sex instruction books, they found that penis was mentioned in 45 books, but clitoris in only 27 books. Vagina in 44 books, okay? In another one of their studies of male and female college students regarding what they were taught about girls' sexual anatomy, 159 out of 164 were taught vagina. And they also believed that the vagina, and not the clitoris, was the most sexually sensitive part of a woman's body. In their third study that they did about knowledge of male anatomy as well as female anatomy, 208 out of 209 respondents chose penis as the term most commonly used for male sexual anatomy at the time that they were growing up. For women's anatomy, about 198 chose vagina, and nobody chose clitoris. Okay, so why does this matter? Look back into your textbook, okay, and about Freud and the double orgasm on page 87, okay, in thinking about women. Phallocentric thinking, leads to this. Okay, now just to review, Freud thought that women had two kinds of orgasms, clitoral and vaginal. So, and he thought that the clitoris was sensitive but immature, and women should learn to have these more mature vaginal orgasms. Okay, well, what do you need for that? A penis. Okay, so it's a kind of like sexuality then becomes focused on the men, and sexual pleasure is a man's thing, not a woman's thing. Okay, so what does this also lead to is something called the orgasm gap. And I get this from Wade and Fareed, again in their book. Okay, so men orgasm more frequently than women. Okay, according to a major study in 1994 by E.O. Lahman, among others, 75% of men reported having regular orgasms compared to 29% of women. Okay, now this is not a natural occurrence. Okay, not a natural occurrence. For example, when women are by themselves, they orgasm 80 to 96% of the time. So they know how to have orgasms, okay? Lesbians have 3 times as many orgasms as heterosexual women, okay? And in pre-colonial Polynesia, women had 3 times as many orgasms as men, okay? Why is this? Getting back to the gendered nature of sexual scripts, okay? So, these scripts, again, lead to penis-vagina intercourse, but only 20 to 30% of women regularly have orgasms through intercourse alone, okay? Also, women are expected to be sexy, but not sexual, to be a sex object, but not actually be a sexual agent, leading to the expectation that that she will please him, but not herself. Okay, this is something that this is something part of the whole scripting things. Okay, also sexual activity. Okay, since initiating sexual activity might go against her sexual scripts, she might not tell him what she wants. So women may not communicate their desires in terms of what they want. So okay, so I can hear this already. Wait a second. How are you going to prove this? Okay, let's look at the college hookup scene a little bit. Okay, a hookup is basically casual sexual activity in which there's no expectation of a relationship, okay? I just kind of put that together myself based on a few other sources, just synthesizing some definitions. And it's basically from kissing to intercourse, okay? In some circles, you might have more narrow definitions of what a hookup is, but it can be pretty broad. Okay, so there's a huge study from Elizabeth A. Armstrong, Paula England, and Allison C.K. Fogarty. Okay, orgasm in college hookups and relationships, 2010. I found this in the textbook called Families as They Really Are. This is a major study of 12,925 undergraduates from 17 universities, including Stanford. Maybe some of you are familiar with the Stanford Research Experience Program. That's it's integrated into a couple classes at Foothill, or maybe those of you who go to other universities or colleges have heard of this. There was a survey years ago that went through the research experience program that Stanford was a part of, and they got 12,925 survey respondents about the hookup scene. Okay. here's where we're going here. There's also qualitative study data from 2 university campuses. Okay, women are more likely to orgasm when, one, they're in relationships, and two, there is intercourse, oral sex, and self-stimulation. Okay, they do much better than they did in previous years. Here's I took a picture of this from the book, and let's see how it winds up here. Yes, but this is from Armstrong, England, and Fogarty. Okay, so and you can see the percentages there. When women are in relationships, and there is when there is intercourse, oral sex, and self-stimulation, over 90% of the time they orgasm. Okay. They do a lot better than people did in the 90s. Okay. So when, about their orgasms. What's the key here? Oral sex, in particular, basically men giving oral sex to women, greatly increases her sexual pleasure. Okay, so and also relationships, because there's a thing about trust that develops in a relationship that may, and also according to this to the sources I have, kind of going off the slides here, but men are more interested in women's sexual pleasure when they are in a relationship than when they are in a hookup, okay, in these sexual contexts. Now, limitation to the studies here that I've been able to think of. First of all, what about people who, college students are overstudied in many ways. Is this any different? The college hookup scene, is it different in, the hookup scene, is it different in non-college settings? Okay. Second, I would be interested in a high school hookup scene. If there's high school hookup scenes, that's very difficult to study because getting through an institutional review board might be close to impossible. But I think it could be done, but it'd have to be a broader study. So, the college hookup scene is it doesn't really explain hookups because college students are just so limited, like a limited population, okay? But even the college hookup scene is not as big as what people say it is, okay? Here's some facts from Wade and Furey, okay? First of all, the average number of hookups for graduating seniors is 7, okay? So that's like 1 or 2 hookups a year, okay? That's the average on average, okay? A quarter of students won't hook up at all. 20% of college students will be virgins when they graduate. About 20% of people will hook up more than 10 times in 4 years, but only half of them are enthusiastic about it, okay? And of those who hook up, 70% of women and 73% of men would rather be in a relationship. It's almost if relationships are preferred, but they're somehow, maybe they're not available or they're inconvenient at the time, so a hookup is better than not having sex at all. However, LGBTQ youth are less likely to hook up, mostly because the party scene tends to be focused on heterosexuals, okay? Racial minorities are less likely to hook up because of there might be an additional stigmatization if they do, okay? There's maybe pressures behavior might be more scrutinized. Working class students, especially those who work or live who live at home in order to save money, they're less likely to hook up, okay? So who hooks up? Who likes hookups? The most powerful ones. These are the ones who have the most power to shape college culture. White, heterosexual, wealthy, conventionally attractive, able-bodied, socially adept. These are the people most likely to endorse hookups, engage in hookups, and be excited about hookups. But still, so what happens here is something called pluralistic ignorance. There's this research done by Tracy Lambert, Arnold S. Kahn, and Kevin J. Apple. Pluralistic ignorance is when a member of a group feels like that they are the only one experiencing a conflict about a group practice. So they conform to the social norms of the group. So they're conflicted about it. Yet other people are having a similar conflict. But they assume that everybody else is okay with it. So what tends to happen is that both men and women are ambivalent about hooking up, but they think other students are more comfortable with the hookup than they really are. Okay, so that's enough on the hookup scene. Okay, let's see. Let's get into LGBTQ stuff. Okay, stigma and homosexuality. Okay, stigma. Okay, this is from Dalton Conley, the author of my intro textbook. A negative social label that not only changes your behavior toward a person, but also alters that person's own self-concept and social identity. Okay, so when a person is stigmatized, it's a social label in which, which other people treat as stigmatized. Their behavior becomes altered. Okay, so. And it also, when a person carries like a stigma, that negative social label, it alters their self-concept too. They often internalize it. Okay, so it's basically, it's a discrediting discrepancy between how you are supposed to be and how you are. Okay, those kinds of things. Now, things are changing, especially in the younger generation when it comes to sexuality, especially here in the Bay Area. But look around the country, there's still this stigmatization of LGBTQ people. So it can actually kill people. Okay. Before that, let me say there's different ways to deal with stigma. One is, one way is you can embrace it. You could say, we're here, get used to it. You can take the label and redefine it. You could cover, in which you prevent the stigma from looming large in social interactions. Okay. You could for example, let's say a gay man at a job. People might know he's gay, but he doesn't really bring his partner to the holiday party. He just doesn't have pictures of his family on the desk and things like that. He just basically keeps that part, more to himself and doesn't bring his relationships in. Passing is when you're trying to pass for someone. You're trying to look unstigmatized. Okay, so a gay man would try to pass for straight. Okay, would refer to his girlfriend rather than his boyfriend, things like that. So the stigmatization of can kill people actually through different ways. Okay, through AIDS and HIV. Okay, well we have AIDS and HIV was ignored back in the 80s because of the stigmatization of gay men and injection drug users. Because of that, the virus grew out in the population. Okay, and not enough preventative measures were taken early on. There's been a lot of advances in the treatment and prevention of HIV/AIDS also, but it didn't have to be as bad as it was. Another is hate crimes. There are still many LGBTQ people who experience hate crimes. Hate crimes have actually been going up against several populations lately. I don't have the data in front of me on LGBTQ people, but it's I hear about it more in the media, okay? And then suicide, okay? And this is what I want to talk about. This is from an organization called the Trevor Project. And I want to talk about gay teen suicide here, or suicide among young people, okay? This is all from that website that I've cited there. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people ages 10 to 24. Lesbian, gay, bisexual youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. Lesbian, gay, bisexual youth are almost 5 times as likely to have attempted suicide compared to heterosexual youth. All of the suicide attempts made by lesbian, gay, bisexual youth attempts were almost 5 times as likely to require medical treatment than those of heterosexual youth. So it's a more severe kind of attempt. Suicide attempts by lesbian, gay, bisexual youth and questioning youth are 4 to 6 times more likely to result in injury, poisoning, overdose that requires treatment from a doctor or nurse compared to their straight peers. In one national study, 40% of transgender adults reported having made a suicide attempt. 92% of these individuals reporting to have attempted suicide before the age of 25. Lesbian, gay, bisexual youth who come from highly rejecting families are 8.4 times more likely to have attempted suicide as lesbian, gay peers who reported no or low levels of family rejection. That becomes important later on, okay? 1 out of 6 students nationwide seriously considered suicide in the past year, and each episode of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender victimization, such as physical or verbal harassment or abuse, increases the likelihood of self-harming behavior by 2.5 times on average, okay? So I encourage you to look at that. Now, this family rejection is a huge thing, okay? Those of you who are my intro students remember when I talked about Emil Durkheim and his, and others of you might know this too, about the variables of social integration and social regulation, okay? When lesbian, gay, bisexual youth are rejected from families, they're also very likely to be rejected from schools and peers and and others. So if you don't feel like you're a part of a group, you're more likely to commit suicide. So, and this has been backed by some research also. This is about suicide prevention from Maria E. Eisenberg and Michael J. Resnick. Okay, they did they analyzed the 2004 Minnesota student survey, 6th and 9th and 12th grade students, and they found that there are protective factors between sexual orientation. Okay. They found that the relationship between sexual orientation and suicide ideation and attempts concerned other factors. It wasn't so much about sexual orientation and suicide, but gay, lesbian, bisexual youth have fewer protective factors, including family connectedness. Okay. Those of youth who are connected with the family, much less likely to commit suicide. Adult caring, okay, knowing that there's even outside the family, that there are adults that care about them, like teachers and counselors and ministers. That there are adults in their life that care. Okay, safe schools, schools that don't have schools where they are not bullied, okay, that kind of thing, okay? The authors conclude that if all gay, lesbian, bisexual youth reported protective factors at the level of non-gay, lesbian, bisexual youth, suicidal ideation and attempts are expected to be considerably lower, okay? So, this is what, just going back to the video we had last week on growing up trans, and remember that there was some suicidal ideation there. And remember that there were some parents who were not really on board with what they're doing here, okay? when the parents weren't on board, I mean, I think it's important to be honest about struggles and things, but I think that most of all, what has to be communicated is that you are part of the family and I love you no matter what. And that's like that's the big message that should be communicated. Okay. In some families, that's not what I heard in the video. Maybe you can look back and maybe you agree or disagree with me, but I heard like, people just saying like, I just can't go there. And also just reading some of your comments on it from this week is like, well, even if you had a problem with transgender youth or something, or even if there's like, something going on there, think about like think about the importance of making sure that the kids know that you love them and will support them no matter what. Okay, because if they get a message that one does not accept them, that increases the risk of suicide. Again, also,